Okay, I believe I'm recording. So hello, everyone. Welcome to our third guiding team meeting for the admissions redesign project. I'm so glad you could be with us today. I'm going to go ahead and share screen really quickly just to run through the agenda. All right. Everyone can see that all right? Okay. So we're just going to spend a couple minutes, quick check-in, see how everything is going. I know there's been a lot of ups and downs with our enrollment cycle. So just interested to know how things are going. And then we're going to take some time and debrief pretty intensely our discovery project that we reviewed in the network meeting this last week on our data questions that we had, focusing on dual credit and the impact on college going and first year success, as well as college preparedness. And then I know that Christine and others had a few follow-up data questions, and I believe that our amazing CPE data team was able to pull some additional data. So we might even get some additional pieces of information to kind of think through and see if that leads to any more questions or just helps us get a better understanding of our current state picture. Then Errol is going to walk us through just maybe some implications for our strategy development as we think through the AI webinar series, or even just if there's additional pieces of information that folks are interested in continuing to learn about related to AI and all of the opportunities within our admissions redesign project. And then he'll also give a quick update related to a recent email around instructions for the staff focus groups and the impact that we hope to get out of those and the information that we hope to glean. And then I will share a quick update on our student journey mapping project 2.0. And then we have just a couple follow-up next steps. Okay, so I am going to stop sharing my screen, and we've had a few other folks join us. Hello, Jenny, welcome. Hey, Amanda. How about before, like we're just now at the check-in phase, so I think it'd be awesome. Let's just take a second and just see how everybody is doing, how things are going in admissions world and everything else in between. And if anyone wants to share, feel free.
Things are crazy as they always are. I, I, I would say, and I'm looking at a list. Well, Scott's on. I mean, it's every day is putting out fires crazy. We're trying to get everybody registered. We're in the midst of orientation season, so things are a little crazy and hectic. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that in addition to anybody who's current student that is for summer has to apply with the previous FAFSA, and we are looking at our data from a retention standpoint for our current students that filed last year that haven't filed an outreach there. So yes, admissions is still happening, but I think there's more interventions that we're having to facilitate and help with than historically, if that's fair with the group.
Yes, that is very fair.
I think from the other side of that,
I would just echo all that. And then, just at the same time, we're having to, plan for next year too. So it's just 2 feet in both camps.
The planning for the next year and having this year calendar kind of pushed back is not ideal.
Yeah, that's another good point, because we have to do assessment of all of anything we did from an intervention standpoint at all levels for the Supreme Court decision. So we have to do all that analysis too, coming up in the next couple months to see how that went and and report that out and et cetera, et cetera.
Kim, what were you going to say?
We are kind of like where you guys are like pulling the students through the admission process. We're like behind pushing them. Right? So we have mobilized our team to do really targeted individual student and family outreach to all of our class of 2024 to just check in on FAFSA. If they've done the FAFSA, have they gotten their financial aid packages? Do they know what it means? Have they made decisions? So we're doing open office hours in local schools and libraries this month and doing some email, text, phone call outreach.
I know the state numbers on FAFSA are looking a little bit better. On deposited students, we're even with where we were last year, on FAFSA filers. I think we are concerned about, loss in some of our low income first gen local students. And what I don't know is whether or not they're going to the community college or whether or not they're just opting out altogether. And I don't know what you all are hearing at the CPE level from KCTCS about their enrollment numbers for fall. Do we have anybody from Key on this call? No.
Not right now.
And I'd asked for a flyer and I didn't see it, but I haven't tooled around too much. Did that get posted from Kia?
At the Wednesdays?
Yeah.
Been doing some social about the Wednesdays, but I never saw a flyer come out, Christine.
No, I had asked for it in our last meeting because I think that for some of our current students that are home, for example, and they may want to meet in person, there may be a better access point than working. I mean, we want them to work with us clearly, Jenny, but like for them, if they want to do in person, it might be easier. So I thought that would be good for our current students to see.
Yeah.
So I have the PowerPoint deck from Cassie. I think that had information in it about the dates, but it wasn't like a separate flyer. Could you use that, Christine, or did you want a created flyer?
I asked specifically about a flyer and she said, yes, she could get one done in the next day or so. Like it would be easy to put together. So we can certainly do that, but I don't have their branding logo lock up. And I think if they're putting it together, should come from them.
Okay, let me just ask her for that right now. Okay. Anything from Felisa or Maria? Check-in updates?
It's orientation season here as well. So that's what I'm working on and planning for next year since I'm a newbie per se for the new recruitment season. So we're getting there. And of course, Kentucky weather's got my allergies having a good old time. So
yeah, pretty much the same as what everybody's reporting. We are seeing good numbers at orientation. And to be honest, we haven't seen a lot, and I think this is the theme with those new students. We're not a lot of, concern or stress over FAFSA. They don't know any different. So same, just focusing on current students and returners and things.
All right. Okay. Well, why don't we go ahead and dive into kind of some discussion and review of our first discovery project on the docket, Chris and Adam.
All right, can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay, good deal. So I did want to touch base on some questions that came up last time and follow up on those. Before digging in though, I did want to remind folks that last time we were kind of talking about an individual level data set that we're waiting on, and I wanted to bring that idea back up because it's kind of important to the work that we're doing and questions that you may be thinking of or that you would have. So if you think about last time, we were kind of looking at, a retention metric or a college going metric, bivariate cuts of all these things with already aggregated data, which is helpful for generating questions and kind of uncovering trends and thinking about what other information might be interesting to us as we work through this. Soon we'll have this individual level data set, which is really, I think, important to our work because it has all high school students in cohorts, and we can look at the students who did not go to college and what happened to them based on all of these metrics that were, cut by all of these metrics that we're looking at with college going and preparedness, ACT scores, and so on, where they're from even. And then we can trace the folks who did matriculate to college and look at their outcomes that way. Sometimes in these kind of bivariate cuts of data that are already aggregated, we're looking at KY stats or high school students only. Sometimes we're looking at only the folks who've already matriculated. Once we have this in hand, an updated version of that rather, we'll be able to do just about anything with it. So keep that in mind as you're generating questions and thoughts, and shoot them to me or to Lily, and we'll we're really looking forward to having that so that we can create any intersection of data with all these metrics that we're interested in. The other thing that I would say about that, kind of touched on it briefly last time. Some of the intersection, we're really looking forward to that individual data set because it will have a standard unweighted GPA in it for all students in high school. One issue with what we have is that 2 or 3 years ago, our post-secondary institutions were asked to quit submitting weighted GPAs to us. So over time, our GPA data are not on the same scale, which is kind of problematic. It doesn't really affect any of the trends that we've looked at so far or that we look at on a daily basis, but it is a limitation. So one thing that data set will be great for in this work is pinpointing a standard GPA over time and its impact on, as a preparedness metric, if you will, on a number of things that happen, including matriculation, college going, first year success, and so on. So we're looking forward to that. Anyway, enough of that stuff, housekeeping stuff. I'm going to share my screen, hopefully, and we will dive in. Lily, can you see this?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is one thing that Adam and I and some of our friends at KY Stats jumped into immediately after the previous meeting because there was some discussion about this at the end. So the question was, well, does the dual credit information that you've reported out, does it include work ready dual credit students and sort of the general dual credit students? And the answer to that was yes. So, that was a great question and one that we're able to parse out. We did this by scholarship. So people who received the general dual credit scholarship and then folks who received the work ready dual credit scholarship. If folks think that it would be helpful to look at this by the courses, we can do it that way. That might include some people who took courses but weren't necessarily on scholarship. I don't know that it would change the story, but if that's helpful, we can do that. But some interesting things did pop out for sure. I think, as was kind of the theme of that question in the discussion last week, although the work ready dual credit scholarship matriculation rates are pretty high, but they're a little bit less than the general dual credit scholarship college going rate. So these are folks who received a dual credit scholarship and graduated in these 4 cohorts. The college going rates are a little bit lower than the general dual credit scholarship. I anticipate that that's because some folks are, these are really set up so that folks get a CTE certification by the time they're out of high school, which in theory prepares them to step straight into a job if they so choose. Part of that also is that these are also set up to transition pretty well to programs at the next level. So, pretty strong college going right here, but again, less than the dual credit scholarship. The other thing that I would point out here is that there are differences in these two, and I am by no means an expert. But the Work Ready Dual Credit Scholarship, as I understand it, folks are able to start taking courses as early as their freshman year as part of the Work Ready Dual Credit Scholarship. You can use both scholarships, but it's my understanding that not a lot of that happens. So when you look at kind of these no scholarship buckets, the first one and the third one here, I'm kind of guessing that this not this matriculation rate for students who did not receive a scholarship is a little bit higher because we're capturing some folks who were dual credit, if that makes sense. But again, this is something that we can take with this massive data set and plenty of cuts. But in either case, these scholarships, folks who are taking dual credit courses on dual credit scholarship or the Work Ready Dual Credit Scholarship are far, far, far more likely to matriculate to post-secondary institutions than are those who do not receive those scholarships.
Chris, it's kind of confusing to me why there's 4 buckets and not just 3. So why isn't it just no dual credit or work ready scholarship, or they got a dual credit scholarship or a work ready dual credit scholarship?
We could cut it that way. This is just the way that the data were given to us.
But you said that if you got a no work ready dual credit scholarship, you might have also received a dual credit scholarship.
Yeah, and I think that that's probably why there's such a big gap between these two no scholarship buckets. Like some of these folks who didn't get a work ready dual credit scholarship probably did get the general dual credit scholarship. So there, in other words, there might be some bleed over between these two buckets here in the middle.
But you would expect that there would definitely be bleed over between the no dual credit and the no work ready.
Yes.
Those are very likely a similar group of.
Yeah.
Okay.
But again, something that we can parse out more in the coming weeks.
So maybe Lily, to your point, instead of 4, maybe 5, which is no, like add the no dual credit and no work ready.
Yeah.
If you can't parse out if it's easier than parsing out the other direction.
Okay. Yeah, something like that.
We also looked at retention rates for those who, so in this case, these are all students who matriculated on the next 2 slides. So slightly higher retention rates for work ready dual credit scholarship students who did matriculate compared to those who did not, and then a pretty sizable gap here. So again, these are all students who matriculated but did not receive a scholarship or did receive a scholarship. And then the last one is the average first year post-secondary GPA, again in these same cuts, and you see a little bit higher first semester or first year GPAs in post-secondary for folks who did receive scholarships compared to those who did not.
Another question. So you're also kind of saying that they might have still participated in dual credit, but they just didn't get a scholarship for it.
Yeah, that's the thing that I'm most interested in, because there are I couldn't even make a guess at how many folks we're talking about, but surely there are some folks who take dual credit or work ready dual credit CTE classes that are not on scholarship. So another way to cut this, and perhaps a better way to cut this, would just be by classes taken in either general dual credit or CTE dual credit, which we can also do.
I mean, this data is very similar to just the entering college with credit versus not entering college with credit data. Very similar. That we're getting presented to in the other work group.
Yeah, again, the one thing being we the kind of quick turnaround thing for our discussion today was and what we got back from them at KY Stats was the scholarship cut. But I think perhaps a better way would just be to look at people who took classes and did not, regardless of whether they were on scholarship.
Yeah.
I mean, and to me, that makes a little bit more sense from an empirical perspective, given what we're after. Like we're interested in knowing what these experiences translate to in terms of matriculation success, retention, and so forth. So yeah, I mean, I think this is a good starting place, but what we'll be able to do very soon, I hope. If you can't tell, I keep bringing it up. We're ready to have these data for some other projects as well. But I think that would be the first place I would go to kind of recut these and get a better idea of what we're talking about. Cut it by classes.
Well,
But
I
anyway,
mean, I would say, so for me, even though this is addressed, like the piece about the college going rate, what I was asking is if we're interested in increasing the college going rate, it's helpful to see that 71%, 71.5% of those that got work ready scholarships matriculated, right? Is that what you're
yes.
right? So that is helpful to me, because without that data, I could make assumptions that funding these and going right into the workforce, well, there are needs and there's nothing wrong with that, but that would then carve off a piece that we would, if we're looking at increasing the college going rate, that would be a lesser slice of the pie, I guess, is how I would do that. And I had not seen this data to understand how many I think we can actually see it I think there's data on the website that shows how many students are taking advantage of each of those programs.
Yeah.
So.
One thing that would be interesting to me is, again, to look at, many of these folks are getting certificates before they ever leave secondary. I would be interested to dig into this even further to see, if folks who are getting certificates are systematically more likely to go that workforce route immediately rather than matriculate to post-secondary.
And Chris, I'm also interested, and maybe you have this in a later slide, we looked at where are they matriculating to, are the work ready scholarship students primarily heading to a KCTCS program, or are they just as likely to go to a university program, where the dual credit students were much more likely to go to a university, it looked like continue to a university program.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question too. Generally, dual credit students, they're overwhelmingly, more than half, a little over half, are taking their dual credit classes at KCTCS. But then that proportion essentially flips in terms of where they enroll when they're a first-time matriculated student. But again, that's looking at kind of everybody who has dual credit, which is the only way we can cut it from CPE. But again, when we have some of these updated data in this data set, we'll be able to see, okay, if you were this type of dual credit, where did you go? Or that type of dual credit, where did you go? And so on. And we'll actually also have, if we want to get into the weeds with programmatic stuff or like what kind of course, what kind of CTE were you taking, what kind of certificate did you earn, if you did, we'll be able to cut it that way, down to the course level by student, by year.
Well, and just keep in mind, all the work ready is not CTE courses. Like all of our teacher learner pathway courses are work ready. All of our public health dual credit courses are work ready. So it is not, work ready should not be defined as equivalent. Now, a large percentage of it is CTE, but it is not all CTE.
No, but your educator courses though are in a pathway that are identified. That's why they fit into that. Because there's an identified pathway
No,
with
I
the.
understand why, but it's just, he mentioned CTE and they're not all necessarily leading to certificates in technical vocational type programs.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just your career pathways. Yeah.
And not necessarily for us to solve here, but I think that there's a bigger discussion as you look at funding and state funding and budget sorts of pieces, understanding some of the underlying data that Chris is mentioning. For example, there are gatekeepers, but then there's also, are there more students that are using, they've done dual credit sophomore, junior year, and now they're using CTE to get an SRNA so that when they go to medical school, they have that on their credential. And is that like, what are the ways in which, if we need to expand it, we know there's not going to be expansive amounts of money. Understanding some of these data and how the money is being used, I think will be helpful if we get to that place of trying to take it down to the next level that will help college going, right? You're going to have to make some of those difficult decisions.
And Christine, to your point, it's very timely. It's exactly what we were discussing on Friday. We have a whole community of practice. A lot of people came together to discuss some of the barriers and things moving forward because it's exceeding capacity and it's exceeding monetary capacity as well. So exactly to your point on intentionality, quality, alignment, and really taking a deep look into what is it we're offering, what's being taken advantage of, and what do we know now that we have several years of data. So I appreciate your comment on that. We do have a whole group working on that because it's complex but necessary, especially since there's so many students engaged in that and what you guys are taking in with all of their transfer credit, whether intentional or random. So we're trying to address that for sure.
I mean, I will say one of the things that sticks out to me, and I'm not making any judgment call on this, but I don't know that there's any parameters around, for example, the private school dual credit scholarshiping. But for every one student in a private school, 6 students can take it, right? Like, so you have 6 public school students. So those are the kinds of differentiators and things that I think would be helpful to understand in making those decisions.
So are there any other future data questions that really stand out that we want to investigate further? Yes, Christine.
This isn't necessarily a data question. Well, it is a data question, but it's more of a, again, like kind of saying something that I've talked about before, which I'm hoping we can get some traction, particularly with FAFSA, but we talked about this with COVID. Chris, I know that, I know that KY stats, we know who graduates. We know we ping it to National Student Clearinghouse. We know who matriculates at places, and we know who didn't go anywhere. With the impact like COVID, we talked about those lost students. We are going to have a whole nother cohort of students that will disappear because they didn't get FAFSA's file, didn't know how to do it, did it too late, what have you. We have to, if we're serious about increasing college going rate, like I appreciate the whole conversation about redesigning the process. There are very low-hanging fruit that we can continue to not put a lot of effort towards. That is low-hanging fruit. If we can surface that data and we can really put some efforts towards getting those students a credit here or into the community college system or into a 4-year, I think that is a critical missed opportunity if we don't.
Yeah, I've been really interested to see just in some descriptive data, the variance in who is taking dual credit over time is really changing, and specifically the low income or free reduced price lunch group is really grown exponentially over time. Underrepresented minority students is really going up over time, but the impact on matriculation, retention, and all the things that we looked at last week has also increased. So it's not that and I do have other like actual statistical, like inferential models that we've estimated that back this up, but it's not just that good students are taking dual credit and therefore they're doing better and they matriculate and all that stuff, but whoever gets into this experience a credit here or a credit there, as you said, like it matters, and I agree with your thoughts there.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the, we're gonna be hitting a demographic decline here soon. Not quite yet, but working towards it. And that is, people are, well, what are you gonna do? And one of the things we do is look at our college going rate and how can we impact that? This is absolutely, we should be doing this, and we should be. I know that there are challenges from a data perspective, but we also know that it's reported back to each district who graduated and didn't go anywhere. So I think that's something that,
And I wonder, Christine, like if we think about it from a dual credit perspective, then they were enrolled at our post-secondary institutions. So there are post-secondary students, right, who didn't end up matriculating as first-time freshmen, but we have them on our rosters at some point.
I mean, I
So-
would look at, I highly doubt that your dual credits are the ones that didn't matriculate. I could be wrong, but I think I think we need to separate these two. And I know that I just asked it right after we were talking about dual credit at Work Ready, but that's because I think those are levers to try to increase, and we need to expand those. But then separately, we absolutely need to be looking at students that we've lost through the pandemic or through the FAFSA
Okay.
issues.
Okay.
Is that helpful?
Yeah.
Christine, what I thought you pivoted the conversation to, what if you read the leading article yesterday in Inside Higher Ed? It talked about what are colleges and institutions going to be doing to recruit those students who typically would have gone to college this fall, but because of the FAFSA delay did not go to college this fall. And can we do special initiatives in August and September to try and have a percentage of those students with us in January, so that we do not lose that group of students that we lost during COVID? Is that what you were trying to say, Christine? I think we were totally pivoting away from dual credit. Anything to do with dual credit?
No, I'm really talking about how do we capture the lost students,
How
whether it's
quickly?
COVID or FAFSA. Yep. How do we identify those students that likely would have gone to college or were on the cusp and missed, and now pull them back in to consider matriculating?
I think I think at the intersection of some of these things, like that 25% who do take dual credit, who are probably, they've gotten a credit somewhere, they're likely to matriculate just on that, more likely just on that alone, in my opinion. What happens to those folks? I think in terms of what, for this and for what we're doing with dual credit separately, I would really be interested to know what, I mean, that's step 2 of what we're thinking about on my side, is that 25% who took dual credit, who participated, who were successful, that didn't matriculate, what happened to them? Because those to me also are really low hanging fruit. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like they've already got some credit, they didn't matriculate. What happened to them? I mean, the dual credit matriculation rate is amazing. It's 80+%, but what about that 20, 21, 22% over time in a given year?
Have the reporting standards that the high schools have on where their seniors go, have those changed over the last few years, Amanda?
You mean as far as the reporting procedures or the actual outcomes?
Well, both.
I don't think that they have changed. I think it's still self-reported to the counselors, and they try to track them down. I have not looked at the outcomes, Jenny, to be honest with you, because it's so wonky. It's
Okay.
really hard to track some students down, or they'll go, well, like, I'm going to the Air Force, and they're not. And so it's really wonky data, but I don't mind to follow up. I just haven't looked at it in the last couple of years, because when accountability started changing like the wind, with each legislative session, it really changed up the accountability pieces that they had, all the components. But I'll follow up. I'll let you know.
Amanda, if you recall, you and I had a meeting like 3 years ago with
Yeah.
National Student Clearinghouse, and National Student Clearinghouse is still willing to do a pilot with us if we can work with CPE, KDE, and National Student Clearinghouse. And again, if that data goes to CPE and it can be disseminated broadly and we can do outreach, we're happy to do that. But again, like, I think that is something that, one, is innovative, two, again, low hanging fruit, and is something that would be helpful.
Yep.
I
Oh.
think for this particular class, the concern I have about Clearinghouse is just, I think that some of those students need to be nudged like early on.
Jenny, I totally agree with you. I'm just saying, I brought up National Student Clearinghouse 3 or 4 years ago, and there's and set a meeting, and we're willing to do a pilot. I would like to see that move forward. I totally agree with you that in the short term, we know students who
We have our
either
data.
applied to us and didn't
They start with
matriculate.
education. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. Are coming from areas that likely are, family income of 50,000. We're doing that similar legwork, Jenny. I totally agree with you. I just, in the frame of an admissions redesign, I'm hard pressed to not continue to push that there are things that we could and should be doing before we jump to other pieces. So I know I brought it up at the retreat. We're talking about data. We're talking about where students are going. We just had FAFSA, where we are lucky to be the state that is 19th in the country in terms of students that haven't filed the FAFSA year over year. It's an issue, and it's going to catch up to us really quickly. So I'd like to put it to the group that this should be an initiative that we try to come out with, so that we have this structure just like we have with the data sharing, with the open records to address the privacy issues. These are infrastructural issues that we should be able to, as a state, if we are saying we need more students going to college, then our organizations and institutions and CPE, KDE, we need to work together to then also pull students into the pipeline that have been missed opportunities because of things that were outside of their control, which unfortunately in the last 4 years, there've been 3 cycles where things have been pretty much outside of their control.
Christine, Jennifer, if I can ask you to kind of put a meeting on the calendar for probably toward the end of June, and if you could put your name in the chat, if you would like to be a part of that conversation related to this. This is slightly beyond the scope of the admissions redesign project, like per se, but I think that as the work that we're trying to do broadly, it's incredibly relevant. And so we will be able to have that conversation and keep that going. So please okay, I see Jenny's in there. Please put your name in the chat if you'd like to be a part of that conversation related to what Christine was talking
And I'll
about.
figure out too on the K-12 side from KDE who would need to be at the table.
Okay, excellent.
That would be helpful and have decision-making authority on that, or at least to take it up the chain. So
Perfect.
Yep.
Awesome. Excellent. So definitely throw Amanda Ellis in there. Okay, so Chris, can we bounce back to you if there's anything additional related to the college preparedness piece of the data? Was there any additional discussion for that from this group? Any kind of big takeaways or implications that you saw related to when we get back together in September and we're going to have our big design thinking kind of strategy conversation? Is there anything else we need to know from this data related to preparedness and the impact on our college going, our first year success, kind of our processes that you think would be helpful? I know I had asked a question, could we add dual credit into the preparedness variables? Because dual credit was such a positive indicator, and then you looked at GPA as such kind of a weak indicator. What happens if you combine dual credit and GPA? What does that do? I'm not saying GPA was weak. It just wasn't as strong as the ACT seemed to be. So I was curious, Chris, if you had.
Yeah, just a second. I have too many screens.
And if anybody else had other additional thoughts on that.
One thing that we dove into last time, which I don't know if this is helpful or not, but kind of this is a breakdown of ACT composite scores. So you've got a preparedness metric here, and then also the lines are strata of GPA, high school GPA buckets. And then, the vertical axis is the college going rate. So, I mean, I think you see here that college going rates are a function of both, but for people who have students, I keep saying folks and people, but students who have really high GPAs, the impact of ACT, the composite ACT on college going rate sort of flattens out. It's definitely going up. So, I mean, I think descriptively, these data suggest that both matter. What I would like to do with, again, that I hate to keep talking about this data set, but what I would like to do is just estimate a model with all of these students in it over time and pinpoint the precise impact that a 1 unit increase in ACT composite has on college going, and the same thing for GPA, while holding the other constant. And then, we can also interact those two things. I think one thing we didn't get into explicitly last time, I think there was kind of a more complicated version of this, but we just split out first year GPAs and post-secondary by dual credit participation, and saw, there's a pretty significant gap in most years, over a half GPA point higher in the first year, which is, really pretty substantive. Dual credit students also have higher average ACT composite ACTs. Let's see what else we have. That's where I'm kind of working backwards because I wanted to start with the questions. Yeah, so those are the two things.
Could I ask for, when we bring in ACT and we keep bringing that in and we're talking about dual credit, can we please start looking at, I think last time we had income levels, but I think the correlation there is a missed opportunity if we're not consistently sharing those things together. The majority of the schools are test optional at this point. I understand the validity and the test score. I know we've been test optional and our retention rates are going up. We've made some adjustments in math placement scores and some of our admission criteria in math, but I do think that that's a part of it that we need to have when pulling all this together. I think the other thing that's missing too is when we think about dual credit, who accesses, income level, those kinds of things. There's a natural tendency in a certain way, and so the data is going to look this way. And again, we're focusing on trying to increase college going rate. I think the other piece that I would say about retention rates relative to dual credit is that part of that we are finding, and we have a large number that are coming in with, and we've been looking at the 0 credit hours because that's been a bigger retention risk. It is a lot of the function, a lot of the substance behind it is the executive functioning, because the dual credit is taught in a different way. The dual credit has different expectations. So there's data pieces involved in it, but there's also this other piece relative to learning loss and more flexibility beyond COVID, more students able to take, have the option of choosing online because that infrastructure and setup was implemented, and in some places still stays. And I think that it's great to take a course. We want them to, but part of that is a faculty member holding the expectations. It's going to be on your college. Like, there are portions of the function of a college level course through dual credit that is more qualitative possibly than quantitative. And I throw that to you just to say, I don't know how you capture that, but there's that piece of it that I don't want to lose, because I do think that's a big portion of why we're seeing some of the retention rates and why we're seeing some of the increased GPA outcomes.
Yeah, that's really substantively interesting. It's kind of at the core of why we're awaiting the data that we are, because our major research question around dual credit is how modality, how instruction, how place of like where the course was taken, how those sort of course level contextual variables affect all of these things that we're talking about. So I'm really interested to see what we can get out of that study and then contribute back into spaces like this. And of course, with our dual credit partners who are here.
And do all of those average GPAs, those include all the the students who are enrolling at KCTCS institutions?
Yes.
Okay.
Adam, did we split out GPA, or these just, it doesn't say just 4 years. No, it's public. So these have both. Sorry. Don't even go looking. It's got both in them, but we can split them out for sure.
Because I don't think any of the publics, do any of the publics transfer in the GPA from your dual credit?
Murray State does.
Oh, you do?
Yes, we do.
Okay. So that's a variable that's different depending on, so like all of those students that are enrolling at KCTCS are having those KCTCS dual credit grades calculated into their first year GPA. Whereas the UK, the U of L, Western, Scott, do you all? Did we lose Scott?
No, he said no.
Yeah, we don't.
So none of those, all of our students, the only courses that are going in would be the students who took courses at U of L, right? Those are the only ones. So you really are, from a GPA perspective, not really comparing apples to apples.
That's great context to have. I did not know that.
But that GPA slide, wasn't that just their first year GPA?
I would imagine that's their cumulative GPA. I would be hard pressed to think that you were able to just get a first year GPA, but I could be wrong. I would think it's their GPA at the end of their first year.
Yeah, it's end of first year GPA.
Oh.
So like, let's say a student comes to us from KCTCS, okay, and has a 3.5 in 60 hours. Their first year GPA that I think you're reporting on this slide is just their grades at U of L. Whereas a KCTCS student is having, that could cause some, I would think that might cause some data differences.
Might be worth a separate meeting to talk about the project that you're working on, and particularly like our data folks, and like there are other things that may help. I know like Todd and the retention group, and there are things that we've seen that we can share. I think Jenny's point is really good, and you're not sitting on the campuses, right? So you wouldn't know what our transfer policies are. I mean, we have state generated, but like clearly there's a difference even in some of the publics and how that's coming through. So I think there are some norms that you will see, but then there's going to be some differentiators, and being able to pull that in so we know that we're all talking the same language will be helpful.
That's good. So Chris, if that's a conversation you want to have down the road, feel free to ask this group. I can give you the roster of this group if that's helpful to communicate with everybody about who's the best point person from their campus.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. And we've got, we can also talk with our regular IR crew about,
Yeah.
About what's included. We've got,
I just throw it out to your listserv, Chris. I mean, quite frankly, I throw it out like where the CPE data is coming. I throw out there, and they,
Yeah.
So I have a question. So when we were kind of brainstorming what topics we wanted to focus our data discovery on, this college preparedness piece rose to the top as a top 2. So what was the intent of this group? Like, what were we trying to answer or explore by investigating the preparedness impact on college going and first year success? Was there something specific that maybe we were interested in, but we didn't quite hit the nail on the head with our data analysis? Is there something else we want to learn more about?
I think that what we were looking at is how do you expand college going rate, the dual credit information, the college ready, now that we know that that's also a high percentage to matriculate. I think there's the funding question, and then there's how do you expand it out beyond those that are already on track to go to post-secondary institution. The answer to the problem is expanding, right, beyond like, and reaching those that this is the key that may get them, like, is that lever that may help them feel confident to matriculate or start that conversation about, you know, attending.
So one thing that might be interesting to look at is, you know, dual credit has grown by 50% in the last 5 years. Last year, our students, you know, took 353,000 credit hours of dual credit work. But if you were to go back before that explosion, what was the college going rate?
Higher.
Yeah,
High.
it was higher.
Much
And
higher.
so, you know, is dual credit really impacting the college going rate, or is dual credit really going to be one of those things that impacts graduation rates, number of degrees, and things of that fact of that? Is that what that's really going to impact?
I think, Jenny, to your point, implemented in a way where it's targeted at students that are on the cusp. I mean, that's how, Scott, we all work on the way that you work your strategies and enrollment is, you know those that are coming, you know those that aren't. What are those things that you do in the middle to really shift the lever? If we're talking about college going rates, this is something that we know can be successful. How do you point? We can all agree that the privacy issues in testing are a major reason why, but we are doing our best to address those. So like why the college going rate has gone down. And the usage by dual credit per student, I think, is also a piece of that too, Jenny, that I think the huge numbers are really a lot of places offering a lot more credit to individual students, which is a whole separate conversation. I mean, that's philosophical because I'm like now getting very much like in the place of you have students that are coming in with 2 years worth of credit who, from an affordability standpoint, may not be the ones that really could have used. Whereas one course in dual credit for a student that's in a vulnerable population could have shifted. And so I think, you know, it's challenging to legislate those kinds of things, but I think that's, you know, part of the area. We talked to superintendents around the state who are like, we even want, you know, higher level engineering and nursing taught and great. But again, all you're doing is making it more affordable and quicker and easier for those students that are on that track. And how do it really the focus of this group, how do we shift and affect those that are on the fence? How do we identify them? Like and for our retention efforts, we have already scored our incoming students that have confirmed. We have students that we know what their prediction to retain is. We have created our opportunity students. We are already working with them to think about what we can do with them over the summer. Like this is the kind of data analysis that would be helpful if we could deploy this in the high school area so that we can know who are those opportunity students, right? There's always going to be students that are going into the workforce. We need that as a state. We need to continue to do that. There are those that are not going to choose a community or four-year college, but they should. So like, I think that's where my mind goes to is I think there are good things, but if not used in an intentional and strategic manner, it's expensive and it's not really driving what we need to have, what we need to accomplish, which is increase the college going rates to support more students through.
So then I guess to that point, is there anything about the students in the middle, the students on the cusp? Is there a data element that would be helpful to wrap our heads around so that we can really get a good picture? What our current state picture is what we want to walk into September with, you know, a really good understanding of where we currently are so that we can really target our strategy development and understand the steps forward. Do we have a good sense of that?
I mean, I think we would need to look to KY stats. I think it's part of the conversation about the big data build is what are those things that are common attributes of students that do not matriculate but have GPAs that support they could be successful, and then use that to to model backwards a prediction that could identify some students that would be a target population that we focus our efforts in.
Okay.
That's what I'm after.
So Chris, does that make sense? Like that's a project that you're
Yeah.
Okay, you'll pull that together.
Yeah, I mean, that goes right in line with what we're after. I mean, our goals are basically to update dual credit studies 1.0 and 2.0 with the added layer of course context. But again, this has got all high school students in cohorts. So I mean, we can look at and model and then turn it into machine learning model if we so choose. I mean, it kind of sounds like that's a route we would want to go, which then folks could take their applicants, or the high school students that they're working with, depending on what layer you're at, and say, okay, this person based on these criteria has a predicted probability of matriculating at X. What things can we do to push that person over the edge? We can absolutely do that. And I mean, we don't have to go down the rabbit hole of unmet financial need, but for those of you that I work with here, like that's what we're doing with that. Like based on all this 12 to 13-year data set of unmet need, holding constant all these other factors or intersecting with other factors, we know where that tipping point is, and we can model that and say, okay, if you're an institution and working in these offices, what can we look at about a student's profile and how much unmet need they have, maybe that we can target with some assistance, because they're likely going to return if they get that assistance. This is no different. It's just a couple different data points. But yeah, that's exactly where we're thinking. So
Okay.
I
That's
think
great.
I think what would be helpful is maybe we can get the ball rolling off of that data set and get the models estimated and touch base with you, and then we can use that to kind of filter back into this group. We'll get that worked out, coordinate with you, Lily, and Amanda and Melissa, and we'll look and see what we've got, and then bring back what's helpful to this group.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds great. All right. Thank you so much, Chris.
You got it.
All right. Well, that was great. Great discussion there. I think that this is perfect timing to kind of transition into the next two pieces of the discovery projects. And Errol, if you don't mind kind of jumping in and can just kind of facilitate that.
I know Christine had to hop off. I have to hop off at 2:30.
You do at 2:30?
Mhm.
Okay. Well, how about, let's see, I don't know if Errol might have stepped away for a second. I will go ahead and
Oh, I'm here.
share.
I'm
Oh,
here.
you are? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Do you want to do yours pretty quickly? Because then if we can get through everything in
Yeah.
the next 30 minutes, that might be ideal.
Yeah, and since folks have to hop off at 2:30, I'm gonna hop over to the focus group email that I sent and just talk through it with everyone, and then open the floor for any questions, and then go from there. So I just want to thank the guiding team in advance. Your all's nominations of delegates to participate in the focus groups were received, and we've contacted them. And then on the 6th of June, we sent out 2 action steps with details. And so I'm thanking the guiding team because we're going to need you all to really positively encourage after a long recruitment season to get those delegates to knock out those two steps. And I'm going to walk through those today just to give you a sense of what we're envisioning, and then open the floor for any questions, and then go from there. After that, I'll revisit the artificial intelligence discussion and open the floor for any feedback that you'd like to share. in regards to that information. We've got some particular talking points that we'll engage around as well. Okay, so I will share my screen. Oh. Okay. Oh, sorry. Okay, so there is a corresponding slide deck that's up on the exchange. But this is the email that went out, just thanking everyone for their involvement. I'm just going to hop right into it so we can make this time efficient. So the first action step is going to be a self-moderated SWOT analysis discussion, wrapping up the recruitment cycle with an emphasis on the spring yield efforts. So the way I want to talk to the guiding team about this is it's your opportunity for that postmortem discussion as your teams move firmly into the summertime and as you go into your respective planning efforts for the fall, which is why there's an opportunity for you to have each of these delegates to facilitate discussions within the SWOT framework around not only the fall, but we definitely want to see specifics in terms of what worked and what didn't work on each of the campuses in regards to that spring yield, given that the deliverable that we're looking to really lean into is give you something tangible for the spring of 2025, and also certain resources for the spring of 2025. So it's organized very, very methodically in terms of who, what, where, when, and why, and how, so that we can cover all of our bases, starting with the who, and the action by the end of June is what we're asking. We sent it out last week, the end of June, preferably an in-person, but we know that might be tough to do. But a facilitated discussion that goes through, for those who are not familiar with the SWOT analysis, strengths, internal weaknesses, external opportunities, external threats. We're organizing it in terms of these particular in this particular framework so we can have a standardization across all organizations. And we're going to connect dots and allow that to inform the next step, which is going to be the moderated focus groups at the end of July. So let's just go through step by step, and then I'll stop after action step one and see if you have any questions. Postmortem SWOT analysis discussions to end your recruitment year. And then capture and submit those notes directly to you. Okay, so we're going to have it go through the guiding team member, and you all can curate it and make sure that it's got everything that's needed. It'll also give you a sense of what's worked. We're doing this also to engage your entire team. And this is going to really make for a very rich spring fall convening come September. So as many of the coworkers that you just determine all the coworkers that you determine will be active contributors in the discussion, front stage and backstage. But we want those focus group delegates that was on that list to be the ones that are, number one, facilitating the discussion, and number two, being a note taker. We also do not want you all as the chief enrollment or admissions officers to be in that space. We wanted to really have a space where your organizations are having a discussion about this previous season. This what is the self-moderated session that covers August 2023 through June 2024, with an emphasis on February through June. We want this to be completed by June the 28th. Just so you know, this doesn't have to be more than 45 minutes. It can be 45 minutes to an hour, depending on what the time looks like. But we do need to have a time commitment for that. The why, capture the breadth of the first person staff observations of the impact of the engagement points along the college selection journey for traditional age college students' decision to enroll. We already have direct student journey from one of the discovery projects. This will be that ethnographic observation from your staff in terms of not only direct student contact points, but also your systems and your structures. So you can use this to carry into your individual planning efforts for the fall. And as I've mentioned, SWOT analysis, you got those 4 domains. We'll ask for that to be submitted in across each of those 4. And then in terms of the questions, we're leaving the agency of developing questions around specific initiatives that you want to understand to each organization. We want those leaders to consult with you to get your approval of the kind of questions you want to know prior to the session. And then once they send you the results of those notes, you send those results to us, and then we'll build from there. Are there any questions about this?
Could you clarify that last statement that you just, the last couple statements that you made about,
Yes.
please? I wasn't quite sure
Sure.
I was following what you were saying.
No
Like,
problem.
are we supposed to develop specific questions?
Yeah, so good question. So I'm available, but we want to have the SWOT analysis effectively are the questions. But when it comes to the actual questions, we're going to have your delegates to develop those questions. They can contact me in terms of connecting them to specific initiatives that you want to know about. But the role of you all as guiding team members is just to sign off on it. It's really a matter of what you want to know. The reason that we're doing it like this is we have found that to be able to organically create, a set of questions that comes from the specific organization is going to make a more true to form output of data in terms of this qualitative data that we're going to use to inform the next step. So Kim, I'm happy to talk to you offline and be able to look at what your last spring has looked like and craft the question if you have any anxiety or questions about that. Okay, moving forward. The next action step of the moment is to schedule the moderated virtual focus group, which is going to be done by your delegates. We have marked off the last 2 weeks of July to get these completed. These will be July 22nd through August 3rd. And this will be all of your nominated focus group delegates. So we ask that you encourage them to do so as soon as possible, but really the cutoff date is the Friday, July 14th. But these will be 30 to 45-minute discussions moderated by myself, and they will include a standard set of questions that are going to be informed by, number one, the observations from the SWOT analysis, the observations that you all submitted in fall 2023 that made up those 6 categories that you saw in the original design. But then also observations captured through the SWOT postmortem. That way we're really capturing the reality of this past year, given how varied it has been, and that's something that we will do. So we will come up with those particular questions upon receiving each of your all SWOT analysis. The why, this is us capturing a full stack qualitative insights from the nominated group of delegates, just so we can better understand the complex social phenomena that inform traditional age college students' decision to enroll or not enroll, and we'll connect it to each of the different discovery projects, and they will be represented prior to the convening that'll be in September. And then how these will be virtual discussions, and there will be 2 per organization. One will be a good discussion with who your nominated front stage delegates were. And those are the ones that you defined as having primary direct student contact. And then one will be with the backstage. And those are the ones who have primarily direct operations and system contact. Some of you all let me know that your organization, due to size or circumstance, was able to provide a nominee that handles both. I indicated that that's not a problem. You can just have them schedule one session and then we'll go from there. There is a link here that you can pull from that email for that scheduling to happen. But what we're asking of the guiding team for this aspect is just to make sure you're encouraging them to get that on the books before they go on vacation, and that they can get everything taken care of. All righty. Are there any questions about that action step related to the focus group? Okay. So on the impact exchange, you've got not only that email, but I will point out you've got this deck that goes through in a little bit more visual detail what it is that we're trying to accomplish in each of the steps. And of course, I am here to answer any questions, but we are really depending on the guiding team at this point to encourage the delegates to knock out each of those action steps and really provide back-end support in terms of acknowledging their importance to informing the planning for your next cycle, because that information you're going to have on hand to inform what you're going to continue forward with or change, but also to it's their chance to be able to, for your entire office to have a voice in the directionality of the CPE funds and the Lumina Foundation funds when it comes to how we're going to invest in a vendor resource or otherwise related to supporting a statewide initiative to reimagining the admissions work that we're doing. I'll say this lastly, I see some hands. We are all also going to be at NACAC this fall. And we're going to be with not only myself, but also CPE and the Lumina Foundation. And we're going to be spending time in the vendor hall, doing a full inventory at the conclusion of this convening. So all of this is a thread leading to that moment that'll then come back, and we'll re-engage the guiding team to help really evaluate the priorities in terms of what makes sense in terms of the direction we're going. So this is the focus group step, guided the discovery project number 4. All right, I see Jenny with a hand.
Harold, do you want the discussion to be primarily around Kentucky students?
Yeah, so it's in the email of who they're going to be traditional age Kentucky students. Yes.
Did
Thank
you
you
say
for that question.
Kentucky students in the email?
I thought I did, but that's a good clarification. So let's be very clear. We're talking about Kentucky students, traditional Kentucky students coming from high school, senior into college. Kim?
Yeah, just a process clarifying question. So the
Sure.
email that we just looked at, is that coming to us as a guiding team member and we are to send that to our delegates, or is that a communication from you to them and we are to just support them in carrying it out?
Yeah, great question, Kim. It was sent last week to them, and then
Okay.
I forwarded it to the guiding team. We can make sure that you're on I'm pretty sure you're on that distribution list, but I can re-forward it to you.
Okay.
And again, your role is to effectively endorse,
Gotcha.
their
Okay.
engagement in this and say, hey,
Yeah.
can you just touch base with me after you knock out those action steps? Have you scheduled your time for the virtual focus group? Hey, do your postmortem with the team, send me that information, facilitate discussions. I'm happy to work with you in terms of, crafting questions, but it's really keeping it open. The SWOT analysis, I've done several of these over the years. It really guides itself when it comes to the vantage point of each individual staff person. So I'm not very concerned about having a standardization of questions across the board. But if from your seat, if you had an initiative from this previous year, that you really want to get an understanding from the various vantage points in your organization and your operation, that would be a chance to be able to say, hey, let's make sure we prioritize inquiring about, this element. So.
Okay, thanks.
All right, very good.
Harold,
Yes.
clarify that you want the conversations to be about the journey of Kentucky students, because I think you say admissions world for the state of Kentucky, but I think particularly for those of us that have half of our teams dedicated to recruiting out-of-state students, I think you might want to just reiterate that.
You got it, Jenny. Yeah, I'll send a follow-up to that email reiterating that. And if you all as a guiding team could stress that to your delegates, that would be helpful as well. Other questions? I'll say again, the part that I am taking a significant role in is the qualitative data. And I'm really excited to be able to get this element of perspectives. And what I will reproduce back to the guiding team is not going to be specifics from each university. It's not going to say, Kentucky State, UK, Murray. It's going to have your common themes across the state that came from all of the staff members to inform this process. So just wanted to be very clear about that. From the standpoint of recognizing, the traditional, approach to our work where, some of our strategies we look at and we want to keep close to the chest. So I want to thank you all for being, so encouraging your team members to really be open and honest. And that's why having you all in those conversations, we're advising against that. But consulting in terms of getting the kind of information you need, we highly encourage. All right, Jenny, your hand is still up. Do you want to ask a question?
I just didn't put it down.
Not a problem. So I see I don't have a lot of time for the AI, so I'll just make a brief mention about it. What we do want to encourage, and I will send a message out, is that prior to the focus groups, that your delegates do take the time to review the slide decks, and even watch the actual recordings of the artificial intelligence series. We've gotten from those who have viewed it, and many of you have already responded to me that have viewed it, some very positive feedback in terms of the foundational nature of that. We are going to incorporate questions in the focus group around reducing complexity. These are all a part of the grant: reducing complexity, increasing automation, increasing proactivity, and increasing transparency through the use of artificial intelligence. And so having that working foundational knowledge for everybody as a part of this will help you when you're thinking about, the postmortem. And then once we get to the solution phase, to be able to be an active contributor. So just, I know you just got past June 1. If you have not seen it yet, just mark out some time. And I would even encourage members of this body as well, make it a professional development for your team, where maybe it's you're just kind of, as they're on vacation, you're peppering it through the summer, you bring them together and they're watching that to get, informed about an essential part of our profession moving forward. So Lily, is there anything that you want me to cover beyond that?
No, that's great. Thanks, Errol.
Okay.
Okay, I'll bring us home, everybody. We're almost done. Okay, so just wanted to, I'm going to skip the student journey mapping 2.0 and just say that we're moving forward with the year-long version of that student journey mapping study. It's going to be really exciting. It will produce at the end 8 unique journey maps for each of our public universities based on hopefully 2 to 3 students that have gone through a full process of matriculating to your institutions. We'll have, Lena, the person who will be leading that study, is actually going to be looking for folks that might like to advise on the design of that. So if that is something that's interesting to anybody, even if it's not a guiding team member, but somebody who's a part of the broader admissions redesign network, please feel free to share their name with me and we can plug them in. That'll probably kick off with a couple of meetings in September. Okay, so our next big thing, we're going to have, Errol's got the focus groups going on over the summer, but really the next big meeting that we all have together is our convening on Friday, September 13th from 10 to 3, and that'll be in person in Frankfurt. So really look forward to that. Errol will be totally in charge the whole day. It's going to be fantastic design thinking extravaganza. We'll be sending out an RSVP for everybody so we can get lunch count and all of the good things that go with a, you know, a nice long meeting in Frankfurt. And also, I wanted to propose an adjustment to the guiding team meeting because the currently proposed one does overlap with NACAC. So this meeting proposal would move it up 2 days to Monday, September 23rd from 1 to 3 Eastern. So I will send this out in an email, but I'm just kind of flagging that for you all. I hope that this is far enough in advance that that's not a huge problem or a conflict for anybody. This is just for our guiding team as we kind of debrief from the big design convening that we have on the 13th. And then the other thing, you know, Errol mentioned this earlier, but the NACAC conference is in LA. It is September 26th through the 28th, and Lumina, as a part of the admissions redesign project, is having a meeting on the 25th in advance of the conference. And, you know, our team is invited to be there, and our grant funds can cover the registration fee for, you know, one individual from our university partners that would like to go. If that is something, maybe you already have somebody who's planning to attend, that would be wonderful. We would love for our partners to cover travel. If that is a hardship, please let me know, and we can talk about that. But it is the 25th, and then you would be welcome, of course, to stay through the conference of the 28th. So our expectation would be that our team goes to the Lumina meeting together on the 25th, and I don't have any other details about that just yet. I'm planning to travel in on the 24th. And then also that, kind of as Errol mentioned, we would spend some time in the vendor space, kind of looking or talking to maybe some technology solutions or some other folks that may be just some innovations in the admissions space, so that we can be really familiar with what's going on just as a part of our process. There is an early bird registration of July 24th. We'll send out some additional information related to CPE, travel processes. I think that it's probably a little bit simpler for everyone if we reimburse the registration. So let us know if you, like, who maybe from your institution you would like to attend, if that is something that you would like to do. And we hope that you can, and we hope that you will. And it'd be fun to go out to LA together. And the other thing I just wanted to flag for you all is that we did have a Lumina meeting a couple weeks ago, and they mentioned that there is some technical assistance providers that will be available to us if we find them valuable. The Education Strategy Group, you know, who has worked with CPE and many other instances, is providing a strategy implementation template that we will be using. And then the data quality campaign, which we're probably all familiar with, you know, has some really great professional development and information around how to leverage data to tell our story. So potentially some good resources there. And then Trendy Minds is a communications firm. And so I know a lot of our solution areas or conversations have kind of focused on communications and how to better communicate and communicate with, you know, who are these the lost students, I don't know, the CUSP students. We've got a lot of special target populations of students that we want to communicate with. So maybe there's an opportunity to hear from them. So we're having some very initial preliminary conversations with these groups just to learn more about what they could potentially bring to the table. And then when we get through our strategy design session, we'll see if there is a role that they could indeed play to support us in Kentucky. All right. Any other thoughts or questions? All right, great. Well, so good to see everybody. I know this is a very busy time for you all, and I hope you are going to at least enjoy the nice weather. A little bit later today, maybe. Tomorrow. All right, well, have a great day, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.